The House will come to order. Prayer by the chaplain.
Let us pray. Holy One, in these days full of joy at the arrival of our finally awakening spring, and in this week when we have remembered William Shakespeare, and in this week when we have observed Earth Day, and in these weeks when we are giving thanks for members of this House who are completing their years of service, whether they represent St. Paul's Highland Park neighborhood or other wonderful communities all around our state. We are filled with gratitude for servant leaders, for poets and artists, and for all the gifts of your holy creation and your delicately balanced earth. Thank you for this day, a day that you have never given before. Into your hands, O God, we entrust all of this day and whatever immensities and intensities may come. And we pray for your guidance today in all of the proceedings of this body of deliberation and discernment and action. Bless each one gathered here. Give them wisdom and courage, that in the holy matter and the holy matters of their lives, they may be bearers of your love. And at the end of this day, may you coax their letting go of day, to sleep, perchance to dream your dreams of liberty and justice and peace and wholeness for all. And then grant that they may awake renewed for tomorrow, and for the gift of each new day of possibilities, signifying so much hope for so many, for this state, for your earth, for our common life, by the breath of your love in which we live and move and have our being. Amen.
The chaplain for today is Reverend Carol Tomer from Pilgrim Lutheran Church, St. Paul, Minnesota. The Pledge of Allegiance. Please remain standing and recite the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will take the roll. A quorum is present.
The clerk will close the roll.
Clerk will close the roll.
We got it. We got you.
We got him. A quorum is present. The clerk will read the journal of the preceding day.
Journal of the House, 88th Session 2014, 90th day, St. Paul, Minnesota, Thursday, April 24th, 2014.
If there is no objection, further reading of the journal will be dispensed with, and the journal will be approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Hearing no objection, the journal is approved as corrected by the chief clerk. Comparison reports. There is a copy of this order of business on each member's desk. If there is no objection, the motions will prevail. Hearing no objections, the motions prevail and the substitutions will be made. Second reading of Senate files.
Second reading, Senate File 2047.
Second reading.
Second reading, Senate File 2312.
Second
Second
reading.
reading, Senate File 2390.
Second reading.
Senate File 2608.
Second reading.
Senate File 2736.
Second reading.
Second reading, Senate File 2782.
Second reading. Messages from the Senate. Got done too. That's fine. Messages from the Senate.
Message from the Senate. This is the Mahoney motion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file. Herewith returned as amended by the Senate, which amendment the concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House File 2948, an act relating to economic development. Mahoney moves that the House refuse to concur in the Senate amendments to House File 2948, that the Speaker appoint a conference committee of 3 members of the House, and that the House requests that the Senate do the same.
Representative Mahoney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and that is my motion.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails.
Hornstein's motion. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following House file, herewith returned as amended by the Senate, in which amendment the concurrence of the House is respectfully requested. House File 2858, an act relating to transportation. Hornstein moves that the House concur in the Senate amendments to House File 2858, and that the bill be repassed as amended by the Senate.
Representative Hornstein.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the bill pertaining to insurance for limousines, and the Senate added a small provision that all the stakeholders are fine with. It basically allows on the underlying insurance policy, which is the gist of the bill, you can combine a liability policy and/or an umbrella policy to reach that 1.5 million threshold. So this is not controversial. The Senate passed it 57-0, and I would ask that we concur with the Senate.
Any discussion on the motion to concur? Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the author of the bill yield?
He will. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for your outline of the bill again, Representative Hornstein. Can you tell us and remind us, is this a bill, a mandate on Minnesota businesses?
Representative Hornstein.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Drazkowski, this is a bill that the business community, in this case the Chauffeur Limousine Association, has requested in order to conform with federal regulations and other practices within the industry. So it's actually one in which the business community has asked for the legislation.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Representative Hornstein. I'll save the rest of my comments for final passage. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further discussion on the motion to concur? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. The clerk will give the bill its third reading as amended by the Senate.
Third reading, House File 2858 as amended by the Senate.
Third reading. Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is another bill brought forward by the majority to once again increase the cost for the operation of businesses in the state of Minnesota. Another mandate, albeit brought by a particular association, Representative Hornstein, that is representing itself in what we see around this place a lot of times called fencing, where associations, groups, or organizations bring forward legislation to raise the walls around them so other businesses have a higher threshold upon which to get involved in business and to become competitive in a particular industry. Members, this is a mandate on Minnesota businesses, regardless of an association that may have come forward saying we want this additional mandate so that we can pay it and other businesses can't get into our particular business. But members, this is a mandate on Minnesota businesses. It will make Minnesota less competitive. I encourage a no vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further? Representative Hornstein.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, again, we voted overwhelmingly, I believe 120 to 9 as this came off the House floor. The Senate voted 57 to nothing. This is simply a bill that brings our chauffeured limousine industry in compliance with standard practice in the industry. I ask for your support once again.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 100 ayes and 21 nays, the bill is passed as amended by the Senate and its title agreed to.
Message from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I hereby announce the passage by the Senate of the following Senate files herewith transmitted. Senate file numbers 874, 1926, 2103, Senate file 2271, and Senate file 2470. Signed, Joanne M. Zoff, Secretary of the Senate.
Announcement by the Speaker.
Announcement by the Speaker. The Speaker announces the appointment of the following members of the House to a conference committee on House File 2948. Mahoney, Purcell, and Gunther.
First reading of Senate files.
Introduction and first reading of Senate files. Of Senate File 874, an act relating to criminal justice. Allen moves that Senate File 874, House File 1082, now in the General Register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
Without objection, so ordered.
Introduction and first reading of Senate File 926, an act relating to building codes. The bill is being referred to the Committee on Jobs, Economic Development, Finance, and Policy. Introduction and first reading of Senate File 2103, an act relating to transportation. Dill moves that Senate File 2103, House File 2425, now in the General Register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
Without objection, so ordered.
Introduction and first reading of Senate File 2271, an act relating to metropolitan government. Nelson moves that Senate File 2271, House File 2663, now in the General Register, be referred to the Chief Clerk for comparison.
Without objection, so ordered.
Introduction and first reading of Senate File 2470, an act relating to education. The bill has been referred to the Committee on Education Policy.
Calendar for the day. The first bill on the calendar for the day is House File 2536. The clerk will report the bill.
65. Oh. House File 2365, the second engrossment, an act relating to employment.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House File 2365 came to me as a report. It started out as a report from the Department of Defense and Treasury to the President and First Lady of the United States. And it was a report that talked about the difficulties that military families have when they relocate. And one of the difficulties in specific difficulties is that where military families have one or more people in them that have state licensures, and then the military family is disrupted and sent to a new place, and they are underemployed or not employed when they reach the new place that they're sent to because their licensures did not transfer. First Lady Michelle Obama made a presentation to the governors and lieutenant governors, and Lieutenant Governor Yvonne Pretner-Solon asked me then to carry the bill that she agreed to help Michelle Obama with. And this is it. We are trying to help military families that are relocated in Minnesota get their licensures for work in a faster manner. The bill has been through 6 committees and then Ways and Means. Representative Savick and Representative Morgan also helped in authoring bills through those committees. And I appreciate that very much. The bill has been simplified, and right now, as it exists, we are asking the boards that issue licensures when an applicant from the military or the spouse of a military person or a retired military person comes to Minnesota and applies for licensure in an occupation they've already been licensed for in another state, that they be given first treatment. Their licensure for a new Minnesota license would be expedited. It would be faster. We're asking that they be put at the head of the line. And we're asking the boards that issue licensures to get together and talk about what they could do to issue temporary licenses, and they would report those means of issuing a temporary licensure in the future. They would report that on January 1st, 2015 to the governor. Just those 2 things. Send the military family or military person or the military spouse's application to the top of the line when they get to Minnesota. And secondly, the boards will have a way to make it faster by 2015. That's all. Help the military families that are coming to Minnesota and vote yes.
There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Follows, moving to amend House File 2365, the second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded 263.
Representative Faust.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last Saturday, I was at a ribbon cutting at Pine Technical College in Pine City. And while I was there, an employee of Pine Technical College came up to me and said that there was a veteran that had applied for a class there, a welding class, and in the process they were applying for the Minnesota VA and found out that they did not qualify for this class. And the reason is that this is an hourly class, not a 4-credit class, and the certificate that they would get is actually given by somebody else, not by Pine Technical College. So because of a loophole, they did not qualify for this. So what this amendment simply does is it changes it so that any time the federal VA program would kick in, now the state GI Bill would kick in. So that's what the amendment does. It's a very simple one, but unfortunately this is not even close to germane to this bill, and so because of that I will have to pull it, but I am hoping that we can do this next year. Thank you very much.
The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 2365.
Third reading. Any further discussion? Representative Detmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chair Murphy, for bringing this forward. I'm co-author of this piece of legislation, and again, it's just going to help the many men and women that are coming off active duty or coming back to the state, give them a little chance to get their foot in the door. It does not secure really anything for them, but it does give them a chance to go through and get their training and get certified at a maybe a little bit faster pace. So thank you, Chair Murphy, for bringing this forward.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 123 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 3115. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 3115, the first engrossment, an act relating to elections.
Representative Melin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This bill, House File 3115, simply puts the St. Louis County Commissioners back on staggered terms. In St. Louis County, we have 7 commissioners, 3 in Duluth, 3 on the range, and 1 in the Proctor-Hermantown area. The Duluth commissioners are still on staggered terms. The range commissioners were on staggered terms since from statehood until about 2002, when there was a redistricting plan that ended up going through the court system. And because of that redistricting plan, they put all the range commissioners on the same term. What we want to go back to is having 1 staggered term on the range. As Representative Huntley pointed out to me, this is probably the first time ever that the range wants to be treated the same as Duluth. So what the bill does is it puts the District 7 of St. Louis County back on a staggered term. So all the commissioners on the range right now are up for re-election in 2014, and they will all have an election in 2014, but then District 7 will only serve a 2-year term, and there'll be another election to get them back on that staggered cycle. So I would please ask for your support.
The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 3115.
Third reading. Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Melin, can you tell me who currently holds the seat for District 7 and what the location is of it, if you could, please?
Representative Melin.
Mr. Speaker and Representative Anderson, it's Commissioner Steve Rocker, and the location of it is where I live, Hibbing, Chisholm, that area, and it's the district that was traditionally staggered.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. Halverson votes aye. There being 123 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 2830. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 2830 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to counties.
Representative Marquart.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. House File 2830 is a bill that deals with Becker County, would allow to appoint the treasurer, auditor, and recorder, and also to combine those offices. As we know, we had an earlier bill this year that did 5 of those counties. There's about 30 counties that represent about 75% of the state's population that have this authority so far, and we do these one by one. Becker County, what they plan to do, and here's the situation too, is that normally these bills are on an off year or they come much earlier in the session. This came to me relatively late, and let me explain why. The treasurer auditor of the county has accepted a position now with the school, and the recorder is retiring. So this is the time, they've been thinking about this is the time to do that. And what the county's intent would be is to create a one-stop shop, which will, as they said in testimony before a committee, that this would create more efficiencies and save some costs. Now, members, most of this bill is all boilerplate language. The 2-week notification of a public hearing before the vote is taken. It requires a 4/5 vote, 4/5, which would be 4 of the 5 commissioners would have to approve. And then there is a 60-day period after the resolution would be passed where citizens could file for a reverse referendum. So that's all boilerplate language from the other ones. I have to tell you about the new part of the language because of the lateness of this being filed, is that filings for office begin May 20th and end, I think, June 3rd. So that 60-day window where folks can come in and do a reverse referendum is going to overlap and actually extend past that time. So in subdivision 6 of the bill, it says if there is a candidate who wants to come forward and puts their name on the ballot, if that 60-day ends before the ballots are printed, then they're off the ballot. If it's afterwards, which probably will be the case now, and there's people running and the election is held and there is no reverse referendum required, then that election would be void. So that is the difference from what you have had from most bills. So it's come late because of the situation in the county. From their testimony, this would really increase efficiencies. And of course, this is left to a local decision. So, members, I know there's an amendment, and I'll yield to that.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Quam moving to amend House File 2830 as follows. The amendment is coded 1131.
The member from Olmsted, Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And members, anytime we take away the people's power to vote and elect a position, it's not trivial. And it's important that these positions, even though I agree with many of the reasons that they want to move to an appointed, and there's justifications there, I do think that we need to maintain the people's power and influence, and that these appointed positions, formerly elective, but appointed positions, that they owe their position and they're staying in that position to the people of that jurisdiction. So my amendment would create a retention election for any position that changed from elective to appointive. And all it does is, okay, fine, we agree you appointed, but we the citizens don't like the person you appointed. We're not running anybody against. We're just going to have the power to say we don't like that choice, pick someone else, and vote that person out. I hope that that would never happen, that we'd always pick wonderful, perfect people and matches for the districts. But frankly, I like to maintain the power with the people. And that's why I'm bringing forth this amendment for retention of appointed positions.
Representative Marquart.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker and members, and thank you, Representative Quam, for bringing this forward. You talked to me earlier about this also. Members, I respectfully ask that you oppose the amendment. We do have, of course, the public is involved with this. There's going to be elected commissioners that will decide on the resolution. The public has the option to petition for a reverse referendum. It greatly broadens the scope of things, and I'm not aware of any other appointive position that has this type of retention election. So, members, I would ask for a no vote on the Quam amendment.
Any further discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 2830.
Third reading. Discussion. The member from Hennepin, Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I had a bill earlier this session, and to basically let all counties do this. We've got, as Representative Marquart said, we got 30 counties now. This will be the 31st county that are doing this. 31 out of 87 counties. At some point, we're going to hit the critical mass of why don't we just let them all do this? I didn't prepare that amendment today out of respect for Representative Marquart. But every year we get 3, 4 of these, couple of these every session. And every session they go through the process, and we vote to approve them overwhelmingly. And so at some point we should just look at it and say make it a policy that all the counties can do this, so they don't have to come out down here and talk to us every single time. Because as Representative Marquart said, 75% of the people in the state of Minnesota already have the right to be able to do this in their counties. At some point, we just need to say, okay, let everybody do it. So I didn't put an amendment up, and I'm not going to, but I feel we need to continue discussing this. It's, at some point, we need to just say, enough is enough. We've hit that critical mass. Let everybody do it.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 90 ayes and 33 nays, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 2166. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 2166 on the calendar for today, the second engrossment, an act relating to elections.
The member from Anoka, Representative Laine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This has to do with an electronic roster study. Last year, the Omnibus Election Bill created a task force to study electronic rosters. We wanted to examine the potential for the use of electronic poll books instead of our paper polling rosters. The Elections Bill also authorized a small pilot project which examined 5 different types of electronic rosters in 5 different cities in the small 2013 municipal elections. These cities could process same-day registrations in the electronic rosters, or they could electronically register the pre-registered voters, or they could do both. But now this bill sets the statutory requirements for going ahead with the use of electronic rosters in Minnesota and gives any local jurisdiction the permission to go ahead on their own. It also creates a small study for the use of electronic rosters this fall's election, this major election, and asks the Secretary of State to give a report back about the experience of those jurisdictions who voluntarily try electronic rosters in their general election. There are no state costs involved. A jurisdiction needs to cover the costs themselves because we needed to pull the funding from this bill. So I would prefer if we would have been able to do a full evaluation, because I believe there's going to be costs at the savings at the county level, but we won't be able to do that. We'll just have to report back via the Secretary of State, and I ask for your support.
There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Quam moving to amend House File 2166, the second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A10.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. And if we're going to do a study, we might as well go ahead and collect some information that would be helpful. Having been on the GovOps committee for several years, whenever we debate elections, it comes up about IDs. So it'd be nice to know how many people have IDs, and as we're scanning them in and using them during this study, we might as well collect that and have that available for future consideration. And so basically that's what my amendment does, is allow for state-issued ID and driver's license, plus federally mandated military IDs are to be accepted across the United States and its territories. So it's just making the study better.
Representative Laine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, it's always nice to have more statistics about this and that, and it'd be nice to know is not quite a reason for doing something, because in this case, the vendors of the electronic rosters would have to charge us for additional programming to ensure that the software provides this additional functionality, specific customization, something that's not in any of their uses now. And since this bill needs to have no costs attached to it, it can't be attached here. You could do it as a bill and vet it and see if people could want to fund that, and see if we actually need this information. I vote no.
Any further discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Newberger moving to amend House File 2166, the second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A11.
The member from Sherburne, Representative Newberger.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This amendment simply keeps the process clear and open and voluntary to all. What this does is it helps us to have some quality control. It would allow any of the political parties would be able to appoint some information technology people to inspect the machinery for the registration, also the software or the codes. If the chair of the DFL wanted to appoint two people, he or she could, as could the GOP or any of the other political parties. There is a time constraint. Before any general election, it's 4 weeks they would have. They could inspect any machines that they chose to. For a special election, it's 2 weeks. All of this information would be submitted to the Secretary of State's office. This comes from some concerns that came forward with the state of Maryland. They used a similar type of system where they had some security concerns about the data and about how secure that was being kept. Also, a Democratic lawyer out of Iowa also expressed some of the same concerns. So basically, members, what this does is it just keeps a clear and open process for our political parties to go in and just inspect the equipment before an election, and then to submit a report telling them what they thought. The cost to this, I did look into this. I spoke to the Secretary of State's or through emails here. The cost would be minimal at best. Most of the costs would be borne by the political parties if they chose to go ahead and do this. So that's it, and I stand for any questions.
Representative Laine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I share your concern, as we all do, for clean elections and for integrity in our voting equipment. However, this isn't voting equipment in the sense it's checking the voters in. Sure. It's the same thing we do with our written poll books now. The software locates the registered voters as they have been downloaded securely from the Secretary of State. And just as now, only it would do it electronically, and the electronic roster can do same-day registration, same as now, only electronically. We have safety concerns addressed in the bill. I would wonder if Maryland has those same safety concerns in their handling in their situation. Both the same-day registration and the checking in of voters is still handled by the judges. They do the verifying of all the information. An advantage is that the software catches any errors. If you voted absentee, as one 86-year-old woman I think did, it catches it and doesn't let you vote. You can't vote if you're a felon. It catches that. If you're in the wrong precinct, if your address is different, these are all caught by the electronic rosters. So they assist these problems with the judges handling them. All of these are already handled by election judges. It just makes the process move faster. The only thing you'd be inspecting is the software. That's a different sort of inspection, and it opens it up to tampering from outside people. This actually needs to be a bill and needs to be vetted properly. The bottom line here is that there are costs, that there would be costs to local governments and to the Secretary of State office to handle the process, monitoring the inspectors, making sure that who these people are, tracking the number of inspectors as more jurisdictions do electronic voting, electronic registration, tracking data processing requests as different parties and interest groups want to know who's monitoring who. It would become a great deal of cost, I think. So please vote no.
Representative Newberger.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Representative Laine. I appreciate your concerns. This does affect I understand you're trying to delineate here. You have voting machines for the general elections. What this amendment does is it approaches the registration process that you are speaking about. One of the problems that was pointed out in Iowa that they ran into by a Democrat attorney was when people would register, when they'd use their driver's licenses to swipe, if the first name was off. So I go by Jim Newberger, but if I'm registered as James Newberger, then it created a glitch where they had a lot of problems depending on how you're registered. So everything has to match exactly, and they had a lot of headaches with that system. I think that initiating this inspection process, like I said, it's open to every political party that chooses to do this, and I think it's pertinent because the bill here shows that you're going to be opening up a study to 12 different precincts to see if this works. I went and did a little research on the 12. I think it would be real beneficial to the DFL to do this because 10 of the 12 test precincts appear to be in DFL areas. So I would think that you would want to have some type of a quality control measure that's independent of the state government. And with that, Madam Chair, I request a roll call on this.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call.
And I'm done. Thank you.
Members, we're joined with a former member of the House of Representatives today. In the back, to my left, your right, is former Representative Doug Magnus, who is from Slayton and represented the Slayton area in the Minnesota House from 2003 to 2010, and then he got a demotion and served in the Senate for 2 years. Please welcome Doug Magnus to the chamber. Further discussion to the Newberger Amendment, the A11. Representative Laine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned, Representative, glitches and headaches from the use of the electronic rosters. That's not the purview of inspectors coming in 4 weeks in advance. That's the locality that's doing them. They need to make sure it works, and they do have the paper backup. They can always switch back to the regular. The study that you mentioned is voluntary. We don't know for sure if all these different places will now participate because they need to cover the cost themselves. This just doesn't work here, members. Please vote no.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. The clerk will close the roll. There being 53 ayes and 72 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Laine moving to amend House File 2166. The second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A9.
Representative Laine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This A9 amendment deletes the reviser's instructions at the reviser's suggestion, and the Senate has already done this. There's been a concern about implementing it the way it's written. Please vote for this, yes.
Any discussion to the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Sanders moving to amend House File 2166. The second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A3.
The member from Anoka, Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Members, this amendment deals with when votes are being, or actually the number of votes are being counted. I'm asking that we go after and count the actual voting registrations and signatures, not just the voter receipts. I think receipts are fine maybe for duplication or double checking, but I'd like the primary tabulation to be off of the actual signatures and registrations that are taking place, and I'd ask for member support.
Representative Laine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is an attempt at careful reconciling of the number of ballots in an election, but I think it has the opposite effect because it eliminates the option of reconciling the number of ballots with the number of voters using voter receipts in precincts using electronic rosters. Right now, the election judges have two ways to account for the number of votes, either by counting signatures, the signature certificates, or by voter receipts. If one count is off, they may be able to do the reconciliation in the polling place using the other method, and they have to reconcile those things. So with only one method to rely on, it's more likely that they'll come up with a mismatch and have to do a very serious thing of going to the county office and reconciling the differences, taking time of the election judges, additional overtime. It's better to have both ways of counting available to us to get this done clearly. Please vote no.
Further discussion. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And while I do think that it is important to have a backup method to check for things, I think the primary, and the reason why I went this route, the primary method of counting should be off of the actual registrations and off of the actual signatures. That should be what is held in the utmost superiority of checking those numbers. It should be based off of those registrations and off of those signatures. It's something maybe to continue to work on, but if we're going to have you can use the receipts as a method to double check, that's one thing. But to be able to say that you can just use receipts as the primary source to rectify those numbers, I don't think that's appropriate. And again, I'd ask for member support.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye. Those opposed, please say no. No. The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There are no further amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 2166 as amended.
Third reading. The member from Meeker, Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. And over the years, we've done a lot of studies around here. And some of them seem to be just to kind of delay and push things into the future. And sometimes we study actually, hopefully trying to learn something that will be helpful in future legislation. With this one, we had, I believe, the Secretary of State testifying before the Gov Office Committee a couple of years ago, and other times I've heard comments about the validity of this. And based on that, I don't really know if we need a further study. Would Representative Laine yield?
She will yield. Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Laine, Have you been in contact with the Secretary of State's office on this? Do they feel that a study is warranted at this time in light of their previous testimony before committee?
Representative Laine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Actually, this comes specifically from a task force that included the Secretary of State and a whole lot of other people. And the small pilot we did in the 2013 was just that, very small. And I think, from my own point of view, it was premature because we couldn't download the data from the Secretary of State office and upload it after, because we couldn't test that. We just had to do it ad hoc. So it was a premature, small little thing. Now we need to really test it under, well, I wish we could, because in fact the study is just a report back. It's not an official evaluation, but I wish we could do an official evaluation in a major statewide election that had this tested across the line with the downloading of data from the Secretary of State and the uploading after. And it's the uploading after that's going to save a lot of money, because it can take a month afterwards for the election judges to go through all the work of verifying all the data and uploading it to the Secretary of State. This could be much quicker, much easier, much less time, and have very good cost savings to the county. So we would love to prove that by evaluation. All we can do in this is report back to the Secretary of State, through the Secretary of State's office, what happened in 2014 for those districts that tried this out.
Representative Erdahl.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Laine, thank you for your clarification. I do think that this is important to know into the future. I think this could be very valuable to our election system. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Discussion. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members, and thank you, Representative Laine, for carrying this bill. I think that it's a good step in the right direction. Like I said in committee, I hope that maybe we take more of the Senate's approach to this bill and remove this study. But if the study does prevail, let's make sure that we study everything that we need to study in its entirety so that we can move forward with electronic poll books. I think any time that we can move forward with technology where we can improve integrity and we can improve access and we can improve the timing and the quickness that we can get through our election process, I think it's a good thing. I think electronic poll books and electronic rosters help us accomplish those goals. So I ask members to support this bill, and if there's an opportunity, I would hope that we could maybe move more to the Senate's position and move to just permissive language and maybe eliminate the study. But if not, let's get the study right and let's come back and do it next time.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 125 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is Senate File 1732. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate File 1732, an act relating to elections.
The member from Dakota, Representative Halverson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Senate File 1732 is a bill that extends the deadline to purchase voting equipment with the Help America Vote Act funds. As many of you know, back in 2010, the legislature distributed funds to counties that were from the Federal Help America Vote Act. The spending deadline for those funds actually passed us in March 2014, and there are still a handful of counties who have some funds to spend on voting equipment. By extending the date to 2016, we're going to allow counties to spend their money very judiciously. There are some new technologies that are going to be coming online, new vendors that are going to be approved in 2015, and so the counties that have some money left to spend actually will be able to do so at the best in the best interest of their taxpayer, and making sure that they're spending money on equipment that is new and not likely to be outdated quite so quickly. Without this extension, counties would have to potentially go back into their general levy, and that would have a negative impact on their taxpayers. And so I'm asking for your support to extend the date of this expenditure. Thank you.
There are no amendments at the desk. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, Senate File 1732.
Third reading. Discussion. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you for bringing this bill, Representative Halverson. It's a good bill, members. Please vote for it.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 125 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed as amended. Well, the bill is passed and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 2531. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 2531, the third engrossment, an act relating to campaign finance.
Representative Laine.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the campaign finance technical bill, and it clarifies and standardizes some wording and updates areas to some of the changes we made in 2013. I ask for your support.
There are amendments at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hanson and others moving to amend House File 2531, this third engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A13.
The member from Dakota, Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. This is an amendment that we passed off the floor earlier relating to holiday cards. It had bipartisan support, and I'd ask for your support.
He just explained it.
Any discussion of the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. There's another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Pepin moving to amend House File 2531, the third engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A3.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. What the A13 amendment does is it adds an official spouse to the gift ban law. This is always an interesting discussion, members. Last year, the Democrat leadership in the House and Senate removed the gift ban, and then this year, Representative Winkler and the Democrats brought the gift ban back. And so, since we're in kind of chaos with this, if we're going to have a gift ban, the $5 gift ban for members, we may as well add spouses as well. Thank you, members.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There's another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Benson M. moving to amend House File 2531, the third engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A5.
Representative Benson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment puts a cap on what can be spent for out of campaign funds when you abide by the public subsidy. Excuse me. and it makes that provides a cap of 15%. So members, under the new law that was passed in terms of how much we can spend for our seat, to give you an idea of what that would do, it would limit you to be able to only spend about $9,300 if you were to spend the whole $62,000 that is now available when you take the public subsidy. Members, we have an issue with the public perception of what we do already. This would be a simple amendment that would allow for us to be responsible for the monies that are given to us through the public coffers and helping us win our seats and make us responsible. $9,300 over a 2-year period is plenty of money to allow us to do things outside of our campaign, to inform us, to take trips or whatever we need to do. We've had members in the past that have spent upwards to $75,000 on this. I think that's totally irresponsible, and I believe this is a responsible way to get that under control. So I'd appreciate a green vote, and I would like to ask for a roll call, Mr. Speaker.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Laine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I consider that 15% is just rather arbitrary, and you have it applying only to those who accept the public subsidy. Why wouldn't it apply to everybody? It seems to me to be drafted poorly. It puts the limits on a candidate. It should actually have the limits on an office. And this really just needs to be a bill and be vetted through the committee process so it will be cleaned up and properly debated and considered. I would recommend vote no.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 52 ayes and 72 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There's another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Anderson S. moving to amend House File 2531 as follows. The amendment is coded A6.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As members, we have certain charities that we have near and dear to our hearts. And typically when you have a charity, you tend to go to people that you know. And in this business, that might be a PAC or a lobbyist that you're requesting them to give funds to maybe your favorite charity. What I attempted to do with this amendment is to make sure that we have sunshine, if that is the case, that if an individual is using a charity and they are also soliciting funds from a PAC or a lobbyist, that they just disclose that to make sure that there is sunshine and transparency on where those funds are coming from and for what reason. Unfortunately, my language doesn't quite capture the intent of what I wanted to do, so I'm going to be working on that here in the future, and I'd like to withdraw my amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Anderson withdraws her amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
O'Driscoll moving to amend House File 2531 as follows. The amendment is coded A7.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This particular amendment will deal with foreign travel, and we have a lot of our constituents who contribute money to our campaigns, and what we'd like to be able to do is make sure that we use those for campaign purposes, and there are some non-campaign expenditures that members would incur. And what this amendment will do is limit members to using their campaign funds for non-campaign expenditures to one foreign travel trip paid by their campaigns per year. And it also requires some documentation of those events. I'd ask members to vote yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Laine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This doesn't really have a lot of use right now because there's only a few examples over the time that has actually been used by a member to even go once out of the country, but I am fine with the amendment.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
O'Driscoll moving to amend House File 2531 as follows. The amendment is coded 264.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment 14 is similar to the previous amendment from Amendment number 7, except it deals with domestic travel. And what it does is it limits members, again, using those same campaign funds for non-campaign expenditures to 4 domestic trips per year. And in addition to that, it puts a cap of $2,000 that can be used for those purposes. What it does also, members, is it excludes any costs associated with travel and lodging to attend a local, state, or national political party campaign. Again, I would ask members to vote yes. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Laine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We usually make decisions like this on the basis of relevancy, whether it's relevant to your job as a representative or a senator. But it's not all that bad, so vote as you choose.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. Motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Pepin moving to amend House File 2531 as follows. The amendment is coded A9.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's a drafting error, and I would like to withdraw the amendment.
Representative Pepin withdraws her amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Johnson B. moving to amend House File 2531 as follows. The amendment is coded A10.
Representative Johnson. Representative Johnson. No, it's Johnson.
Mr. Speaker, this amendment deals with non-campaign expenditures out of your campaign funds. I've looked at a number of campaign reports over my lifetime, and I see the vast majority of the funds go to what it's for getting the candidate elected and helping that candidate get elected. Unfortunately, we have a few people that have, I believe, abuse the funds and not openly be open and honest with the donations that receive for the campaigns. This amendment requires mileage expenses for non-campaign disbursements to be able to be documented should the Campaign Finance Board require in an audit. This will make it open and honest to the public and to the donors. There's different candidates spend in a non-campaign year well over $1,000 in non-campaign expenditures for mileage and getting reimbursed for that. This amendment would require evidence what that expenses were with a mileage log and other receipts required in that. I believe that we do need an open and honest with our campaign reports, as they are a public document, and as much information with some of these expenses, especially in the non-campaign related expenses, should be open to the public. But I also found out there's some issues that we need to be taken care of first in the Elections Committee on this, so I'm going to withdraw this amendment.
Representative Johnson withdraws his amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Anderson S. moving to amend House File 2531, the third engrossment is followed. The amendment is coded A4.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Some of you have had a chance to visit me in my office, and you will see that I have two posters in my office of the Minnesota State Fair. It is one of the things that I go to every single year. I actually have a food route that I take, and in that food route, yeah, I know, not a healthy place to go necessarily, but in my food route, I always visit the mini donut stand. Now, I happen to have a little preference to Tiny Tim mini donuts, and that's the one that I go to. However, if you happen to be on the far side of the state fairgrounds, and that mini donut, a little tinge, that hunger strikes you, there is a mini donut stand underneath the grandstand, kind of nondescript, that you'll go to, that a lot of folks visit and aren't quite aware about what that mini donut stand is about. Because if you were actually to purchase a mini donut from that stand, it's a direct contribution to a particular political party. And not that there's anything wrong in using that as a fundraising mechanism. However, if you are just a regular citizen going up to the stand, and if you haven't seen the news articles about it in the newspaper and in the news, you would be inadvertently making a campaign contribution to this one political party. Now, we're not talking, small change here. As we all know, the folks that operate at the Minnesota State Fair, a lot of times those food booths, this is their one gig that they have for the year. They don't have to raise any other money off of it. That stand alone from 2006 to 2013 has raised over $250,000. And that money goes to House candidates, Senate candidates, and to a political party unit. And again, I will reiterate that I have no problems in them using this as a mechanism to raise funds. However, I think the citizens have the right to know that when they make a purchase, how those funds are going to be used. When the employees work there, they are instructed specifically not to wear any campaign t-shirts, campaign buttons, or anything that would identify their political party. And so it's very clear that I think that the citizens have no idea when they're making that purchase that this is going to a political campaign. In one of the Star Tribune did an article on this issue, and when they interviewed folks at the state fair about, hey, did you know that this is making a contribution to a particular party? One of the customers said, this booth? Completely caught off guard. Another person said, well, I want to know where my money is going. And you will see countless organizations out there, whether it's Finnegan's Beer, they make a clear a disclaimer that their proceeds are going to be going to a charitable cause. I think the same should be done for this outfit. So what my amendment does is just ask that we have a disclosure and that the citizens are notified that when they make this purchase, these dollars are going to be used for campaigns of a certain political party. So that's what all I ask for. And Mr. Speaker, I'd like to ask for a roll call, please.
Roll call requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. There is an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Winkler moving to amend the Anderson S. amendment as follows. The amendment is coded A14.
Representative Winkler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I think the Anderson amendment is very good but can be made better. And I would like to start by asking for a roll call.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Winkler.
Members, Representative Anderson very ably said, and it's maybe not an exact quote, but it's pretty close, that when people make a purchase, they should be informed of how those funds are used. And I think that's a generally good idea. I think it's fair to let people know that their money can be used to influence campaigns and politics. What the amendment before you, or the amendment to the amendment does, is clarify that any time you make a purchase and that money goes into the treasury of a business or corporation in Minnesota, that you get a warning that the purchase that you just made could be used to affect the political process, could be used to shape an election, could be used on issues and items and ideas that you don't agree with. And I think the example that we had in 2010 with Target and their effort to shift Minnesota's election on behalf of one particular candidate, and the response that they received in the marketplace of ideas as a response is a pretty good illustration of the value of this. Let the people know where the money is going, and they can decide whether or not they want their money to go there at all. So, members, I would hope for your support on the A14. I think it takes a good amendment and makes it better.
Any discussion? Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the author of the amendment to the amendment yield?
He will. Representative Pepin.
Thank you. Representative Winkler, I didn't have time to read through your amendment yet. I'm wondering, does this also include union disclosure? I was just kind of looking at a list here, and it looks like a lot of the top donations are from unions, and of course there's union fees. So is it just for corporations? Because I believe I have some information that corporations tend to they divide their dollars between both parties. Unions are pretty one-sided. I'm wondering if this just applies to corporations or if it also applies to unions, and make sure we have transparency there.
Representative Winkler.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Pepin, no, it doesn't apply to unions because that's already the law for unions. If people do not want their union dues to go for political purposes, they can pay fair share dues and not join, and that money then is not allowed to be used for political purposes. Furthermore, the Anderson Amendment relates to the public knowing about a good that they are purchasing, and so we are applying the same standard of letting the public know that a good that they are purchased could result in revenue being used for a political purpose with which they might disagree. So there's really no equivalent. As far as I know, organized labor doesn't have booths anywhere, or they don't have stores anywhere where people are coming in and buying goods and not knowing that that money could be used for a political purpose. So I don't think that's really an on-point analogy, and I think the law on this point is already pretty well covered as far as dues.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Winkler continue to yield?
He will, yeah. Representative Pepin.
Representative Winkler, and what is the fair share price that union members generally have to pay as a percentage?
Representative Winkler.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Pepin, I don't really know that percentage off the top of my head. It's not really relevant to the discussion of the amendment or the amendment to the amendment. We're talking about the public purchasing goods. And I frankly am surprised to see any opposition or folks rising to question this. If you believe that disclosure is good and that people should get to know where their money follows, I think disclosing that on the front end for consumers of any establishment makes sense, not just one at the state fair. So I don't know that it really is relevant. My point about the union fair share is that if you choose that route, that money cannot be used for political donations.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and Representative Winkler. Well, I think we know what the repercussions are for not paying your union dues, and I think actually it's a little harder to see. I think there's a lack of transparency there. I think the difference is that usually if you're in a union, you don't have a lot of control. You're pretty much forced to pay your union dues or potentially face repercussions. So I think your amendment's good, because I know we have some information here that the corporations generally tend to spend money about equally on Republicans and Democrats, so I don't necessarily think it's a bad idea that you're trying to change the amendment. I do think it sort of is one-sided, though. We're trying to, I think the idea is that some people think that corporations give more to Republicans. I don't know that that's true. I have information that says it's not, but it doesn't seem like there's a lot of thought to transparency in unions, and I think that we want to make sure that there's transparency all around is the point I'm getting at, Representative Winkler.
Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would Representative Winkler yield to a question?
He will. Representative Quam.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I noticed you handed something out, and I was wondering if I should be distributing this back to you or the address on the sheet that you handed out.
Representative Winkler.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Quam, that's an amendment to be discussed later.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Winkler, if you would yield, please.
He will yield. Representative Anderson.
So, Representative Winkler, for the donut grandstand, the money is going to the Democrat Party. So if you have a business that happens to give donations to both Democrats and Republicans, is that what you're saying that your language would do in your amendment?
Representative Winkler.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Anderson, what my amendment does is provide information so that when they make a purchase, they are informed how those funds are used, just as you stated would do for the donut booth. And it's not about which party is doing what. Representative Pepin may be correct. She was incorrect when she said that organized labor only donates to one campaign or one party. That's not true. both sides, business and labor, contribute money to both Republicans and Democrats. They engage in a lot of different types of political activity. What my amendment does is clarify that when you purchase a good or service, you know that that money could be used for a political purpose. That's all it does, and it's the same point that you made with respect to the donut booth.
Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Winkler, I think Representative Pepin made some really good points. My husband happens to be a school teacher, and he pays union dues, and he doesn't give full disclosure on how his dues are being used. He doesn't see what percentage is actually being sent to political campaigns, what campaigns in particular. And so I think that there could be a lot better transparency, and he has no way to direct those funds if you wish to do that. So with having said that, I think that that's something that we should work on together, Representative Winkler. I hope to have your support on that, and I'd like to withdraw my amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, I think it can. Yeah, she has control.
Even though there's another motion. Yeah. Representative Anderson withdraws her amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, over here.
Representative Nelson.
I guess a point of personal privilege. I just wanted to discount some misstatements that have been made on the floor here regarding this last amendment, and I was trying to get your attention, and I wasn't seen, but unions dues and fair share dues are set.
Representative Nelson, that's really not a point of personal privilege, so we can address that later. There's another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Juskowski, moving to amend House File 2531, the third engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A11.
Representative Juskowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Before you is an amendment to repeal the political contribution refund program. I think most members are familiar with this program. And the only thing is I don't know how many Minnesotans are familiar with this program. For the benefit of those watching and listening and might be interested to know more, Minnesotans are forced to pay against their will for a political contribution refund program. Many of us refer to it as a political welfare program. And here in Minnesota, we have a program that enables candidates for public office in the state of Minnesota to receive a contribution from an individual for $50 or from a couple for $100, and for the person contributing that, for the taxpayers to be in a position to refund that person for their contribution to that candidate. So members, what we have here in this program is a political welfare program where people running for office are reimbursed, the contributors are reimbursed by the taxpayers for contributions that go to them to help them run their campaign. So members, what we have in front of us is an amendment to repeal that program, to lift the oppressive burden from the Minnesota taxpayers of this political welfare program that they, the taxpayers of the state of Minnesota, are forced to pay for against their will, as the reimbursements for this program are paid for from the state's general fund. Now, members, some history on this program. The political contribution refund or welfare program was actually defunded by the Republicans when we were in the majority in 2011. So we starved this program of taxpayer dollars to stop the political welfare flow to politicians in the state of Minnesota. Republicans did that in their budget in 2011. Now, members, I had a bill in 2011 and 12 to actually remove the authority for this program completely from Minnesota law. It passed this House. It didn't pass the Senate, so it wasn't enacted into law. But this House passed the bill to get rid of this program. Essentially, part of that bill anyway was the same language included in this amendment. So this House has passed. When Republicans controlled the House, we passed the bill to end this program. Now, recently, we have had a change in control in the Minnesota House, and the Democrats are in control here. And we've got a different budgeting approach and different priority approach. This program is now fully funded with taxpayer dollars against their will to contribute political welfare to politicians throughout the state of Minnesota at a cost to the general fund members of about $12 million per biennium. And so, members, this amendment in front of us would repeal permanently the political welfare program and relieve the taxpayers of Minnesota from the undue burden of having to pay for our campaigns. So, members, Republican, Democrat alike, are being funded by this program, and I encourage your support for the amendment, and I ask for a roll call, Mr. Speaker.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. There's an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Winkler moving to amend the Drutzkowski amendment as follows. The amendment is coded A15.
Representative Winkler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is the hypocrite amendment. The A15 makes clear that if you're taking the money, you can't vote against the program. And Representative Drutzkowski, I appreciate your long recitation of the history of this program. It's well established that you oppose having the individuals in your district who can't afford big contributions, who can't afford the big money to influence our elections, the ordinary people who work every day. It's very clear in your history that you do not believe that they should be able to contribute or be part of the political process by having this refund program. Your position on that is well known. It's also interesting, you would characterize this as a welfare program. I would call it something different. But you got elected on welfare, Representative Drutzkowski, and your caucus has been on welfare ever since, except in those lean budget times. So I don't know why you're quite so eager to turn off the gravy train that fed you initially when you first got here in your special election in 2007. Members, what this program is about is not welfare. This program is about something called participation. It's about a democracy where people can actually be engaged, can give money to the candidate of their choice, the party of their choice, either side, and have some influence in who gets elected and who doesn't. Members, this is something pretty basic. If we believe, I don't, but if others believe, and it's the law, that money equals speech, then if you are denying people who have little resources the ability to exercise their right of free speech in our system of government in Minnesota. So this is not for politicians, this is not political welfare, but if it was welfare, you would be the biggest welfare recipients in the state, but if it's not welfare. What this is about is ordinary people, people in retirement who are sitting at home and upset about their property taxes. This is people who are upset that the regulatory burden on their small business that they're struggling in is too big. This is for people who think that state taxes are too high. This is for people who think that they should be engaged in more resource extraction. This is for people who are operating a pawn shop or a check cashing service or a payday lender who are struggling. Those people might want to get involved in the political process but can't afford it because of the oppressive burden of the business climate in Minnesota. And as a result, they get this flyer that says, "Take back Minnesota from the Democrats." Even if they're poor, even if their resources are stretched, they can still participate in the political process. That's what this is about. But if you don't like it, then just give the money back. You take more of it, give it back. If you don't like welfare, don't take it. And I ask for a roll call vote, Mr. Speaker.
You already have one, right? There already is a... there's 15 hands. There'll be a roll call. Any discussion to the amendment? Representative Drutzkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Winkler, for your amendment and your discussion of apparently everything but the amendment to the amendment. But, Republicans have used this program because we are not stupid. I don't see anybody standing up for debate over there. Oh, Representative Mahoney's standing up. But members, The reality is we would place ourselves at a strategic disadvantage against the Democrats if we didn't use this program when you fully fund it. And if we repeal it, none of us will be using it. Republicans, Democrats, Independents, or anyone. And that's the goal of the underlying amendment. Mr. Speaker, members, the amendment to the amendment aims to require campaigns to pay back their contributions, and in absence of campaign funds to reimburse it, to have individuals pay back that. Representative Winkler, I support your amendment. I encourage a green vote on the amendment. I think this would go a long ways towards accomplishing what you said, what is what I truly believe, that we should not, as politicians, as representatives, as candidates, be relying on the people of Minnesota to fund our campaigns. So thank you for your amendment, and Mr. Speaker, I'd encourage a green vote on it. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, the clerk will take the roll. The clerk will close the roll. There being 125 ayes and 0 nays, the motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. We are back on the Driscollowski amendment. Any further discussion? Representative Driscollowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members. Thank you, Representative Winkler, for the debate on this amendment. I'd encourage a green vote on the amendment. I think we need to get to the point where we stop Republicans, Democrats, and Independents relying on the taxpayer dollar in order to fund our campaigns. This would bring an end to political welfare, or at least a portion of it. There's one other program here in Minnesota, the straight subsidy program, that would need to go too. But this would be a great start. And I heard a reference to free speech, and I think that not only extends here to campaigns, but it also extends to MNsure. I just wonder, members, how much we have to continue to pay until we can talk about MNsure. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Encourage a green vote on the amendment.
Representative Loeffler.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I think the public who is watching this needs to better understand fully what this program is about. And it is about limiting the influence of special interests, lobbyists, and PACs in the funding of our campaign. And it has been very unfairly characterized here. In order for a candidate to qualify for this refund program, they have to sign irrevocably that they will limit the amount of money that will be spent on their campaign, and that they will limit the amount of money to a small portion of that expenditure limit to come from PACs and lobbyists. And I can tell you my constituents love this program because of that aspect, perhaps as much or more than the refund, because they really don't want me to run based exclusively on money coming from outside of my area, from PACs and from lobbyists who they have never had a chance to interact with, whose agenda they don't understand. They want us to get the majority of our money from the ordinary voter who is interested in the issues before us and that impact their lives. And so I will vote against this because I believe in campaign funding that's dependent on the people, the real people, the small voters who maybe can only give $5 or $10. But that $5 or $10 is a bigger contribution. It means more to me than some of the bigger checks that I can get from others. I'd urge a no vote.
Representative Laine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to say that it's, as we've heard here, it's very valuable to engage small donors, and it's very valuable for keeping our public campaigns clean. And I, for one, am voting no also, and I encourage you to do so.
The clerk will take the roll. Oh, I'm sorry. Don't take the roll. Representative Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members of the loyal opposition over there. Most of the money that's going to go back under this amendment is going to come from your side. Over the years, the Republicans have vastly outplayed the Democrats in the collection of money under this provision. So if you want to shovel all that money back that you've already collected, that's what's going to happen with this. Thank you.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 54 ayes and 71 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 2531, as amended.
Third reading. Discussion of the bill. Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, I just need to clear up a few things that were said on the floor here that are misstatements, and I'd say a little bit heavier on that term, but I'm be polite. There was a lot of talk here about fair share dues and unions and all that stuff that isn't part of this bill, but just for your information, fair share dues can be no more than 85% of what the full dues are for the membership. And it cannot be spent on political activities or organizing activities. That dollar amount or percentage is not, it can't be more than that. So if they spend less than 15% on those activities, they can't recover. Or if they spend more than 50%, they can't recover, or less than 50%, they can't recover more of the dues from it. If and those dues are set every year. So if a union spends a lot of money in a year on political contributions, more than 15% of their intake of dues, their fair share goes down because that's set based on what they've done. There was talk about transparency in what unions spend on political activities. Well, every year, every single union in the United States has to fill out what's an LM1 or an LM2, depending on the size of them, and that gets sent to the U.S. Department of Labor. That stuff, those forms are put on line, so you can look at those, so you can see exactly how much each individual union spent on political dues or political activities, because it's listed in the LM2s. So there's transparency there, more transparency than we have elsewhere. Also, money spent on, at least in my union, and I believe most unions are this way, it's voted on by the membership. They're one of the most democratic groups of organizations out there. The membership has the right to vote. The membership at the meetings has the right to vote whether they want to spend this money for candidate A or candidate B.
And so every single time they make an expenditure, that's voted on by the members of the local union. So to say that the members don't know where it's being spent, they can find that money out. And to the idea that it's only spent for Democrats, that's another outright misstatement, because I know my local union and many others have supported many Republican candidates over the years because they support the issues that we stand for. So members, I just want to clear up those misstatements that have been made on the floor regarding that, because that's an outright stretching of the facts.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Would Representative Nelson yield to a question?
He will yield. Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Nelson, how do unions get their money? In other words, how are they funded?
Representative Nelson.
Madam Speaker and Representative Pepin, they're funded by the dues that they collected from members to belong to them. Just like the Chamber of Commerce is funded by the dues that their members supply to them.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and Representative Nelson. I believe that your comments are in response to something I said. And I just wanted to point out a few things, Representative Nelson. In the last 6 years, you apparently didn't agree with what I said or believe what I said, but I encourage you to check an article in December 30th, 2013 from the Star Tribune, which pointed out that $4.8 million was spent by one union alone, Education Minnesota. Nearly all of it, the article says, was benefiting Democrats. In fact, unions in the last 6 years have spent $17 million, virtually all on Democrats in Minnesota. And so, is there transparency because we write it down? Perhaps. But when you consider that if you're in a union, you pay union dues. And sure, some people, I don't know what the percentage is, can get by with paying 85% of the fair share dues. And those people are generally people that don't want to be in the union. That's why they pay fair share. So I think when we're talking about transparency, we should be very honest. We should look at the top union donations. I was at a seminar on election integrity a few months ago in which the speaker spoke. And the speaker talked about the overwhelming influence of the Koch brothers, which I thought was really interesting because the Koch brothers actually are number 59 on the list. But you want to know what the top 16 are, Representative Nelson? Number 1, Act Blue, 99% of contributions to Democrats. Number 2, the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, AFSCME, 1% spent on Republicans. Number 6, International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, 91% on Democrats, 2% on Republicans. United Auto Workers, 0% on Republicans. Carpenters and Joiners Union, 9%. Service Employee, 9% on Republicans, 71% on Democrats. Service Employees, 84% on Democrats, 2% on Republicans. Laborers Union, American Federation of Teachers, Communications Workers of America's Teamsters Union, and United Food and Commercial Workers Union round off. I think that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, probably 12 of the top 20 are from unions. And I don't think that there is a lot of transparency there, because the difference is because people have to be in a union, or they have to pay their fair share of union dues if they are in a union. So, Representative Nelson, I do take a bit of offense when you talked about that it's not true that most of the dues go to unions. I have an article here that says I think that Star Tribune article even says it's close to 90% that goes to Democrats overall. And so, while you may take offense to what I said about fair share, I don't think I misrepresented the fair share. I thought it was about 85%. But, if we're going to go into transparency, I think that we should be pretty clear. And just another thing, as long as I've got the podium, that happened at that conference that I was at. When you're at a conference on election integrity and the top person in the state, in the House, is there giving a talk on election integrity, it's a little disturbing when it's really just one-sided and we talk about all the contributions of the Koch brothers and the nasty Republicans. The speaker also represented one fact of one race, House District 51B, where he pointed out at this conference that 6 mailings went out from the business community on behalf of Representative Wardlow. What he didn't mention was that actually there was $55,000 more spent on behalf of the other candidate. And so that was a little bit frustrating and concerning to me when we're talking about election integrity. So I'm sorry if I've stretched a little far afield, but Representative Nelson, when you got upset about the transparency on union issues, I think that if we're going to have transparency, then we need to have transparency all around, not just, we've heard a lot about corporations and the transparency there. Let's have full transparency on both sides of the issue. Thank you.
The member from Itasca, Representative Anzels.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. You know, members, there's an obvious common sense solution to this rather interesting argument we're having here about unions and their tendency to contribute more to one party than another. Once again, as Representative Nelson indicated, unions are democratic institutions where these decisions are made by the members themselves. And all you guys got to do on your side of the aisle is support workers a little more, and they'll make some contributions.
The member from Wabasha, Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, Representative Anzels, there's a lot of Republicans in unions in Minnesota, too, who have their dues extracted from them against their will. And then these dues are contributed from these public sector and employee unions at an alarming rate to the Democrat Party, as Representative Pepin pointed out. Now, members, I've got a sheet in front of me, and it's not an exhaustive one, but 2012, the labor contributions and independent expenditures to the Democrat Party, the House DFL, if you add all of the unions up that are on this list anyway, $425,000 in 2012. The Senate DFL, $458,000 for the 2012 elections. The state DFL party, $2.5 million in 2012. Independent expenditures on behalf of Democrats in the state of Minnesota in 2012, $4.9 million. Members, a grand total on this sheet, and it doesn't include the union contributions to members or candidates in their campaigns, $8.3 million to Democrat candidates in the state of Minnesota. Now, Representative Anzels, Representative Nelson, I don't know how much has been contributed to Republicans. I don't know. I don't know if there's been any. I've never received any. And I would expect that a good number of our members in their campaigns have not received any either. But Representative Pepin's right. As we see these bills and these amendments come forward, if there's going to be transparency, there should be transparency for both sides. The union organizations and their contributions should be included in this language, but it's mysteriously missing in the bills that come through here, as the people of Minnesota should know at this point. So that's why I shared that, Madam Speaker. Thank you for your indulgence, Madam Speaker.
The member from St. Louis, Representative Metza.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Representative Drazkowski, 2012 was quite the year. I remember being down here at the Capitol before I was a legislator, and we were in disagreement as a union movement with your positions on right to work. And when you're basically trying to tell people who have democratically decided to be part of an organization that they can have people partaking in the services that the union is offering the membership, that they basically got upset and came down here and they didn't donate to your members because of that. And I don't see a problem with that. I actually, outside of session, work with the AFL-CIO back in my region. I know my membership very well. I work over 7 counties for my jurisdiction. And part of every screening, when we give a donation, all the members are there to vote campaign by campaign. I've sent out letters to Republican members just the same as I do Democrat members running for office. So I think, really what we need to look at is the perception of yours that we basically are not giving money. It's because we don't agree with you on the issues, like Representative Nelson said. And to be quite frank, unions aren't a Democrat organization. They are strictly going for the best interest of their membership. And that's what they're here advocating for. And if the stars don't align with what you're working on, then they probably aren't going to work with you.
Member from Hennepin, Representative Dean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I'm glad we're having a conversation about independent money in our elections. I think that that's a key piece that we need to address, and I hope that Representative Drazkowski and Representative Pepin, that you'll support an amendment, a resolution that I have forward that really wants to take this type of money out of elections. It's the bill that requests that Citizens United be overturned by the U.S. Congress by proposing an amendment to the states to say that money is not speech. In 2012, over $360 million was spent nationwide, and us as candidates had no say on what that money said and what it did. So I look forward to your support when that resolution comes to the floor.
Further discussion. The member from Dakota, Representative McNamara.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. I think this is an interesting discussion, so I just have to get in on it. It's interesting how on both sides people have talked about special interest and how they want to get it out. But I want to remind all 134 members here there's a very easy way to do that. And if I'm not mistaken, almost none of you do it. It's called PAC, lobbyists, and special interests. It's just interesting, Representative Van Zelt. I've had scores of checks from the unions come, and they've been delivered. I think the word used was delivered to my campaign. None of them have been taken. No, I've never taken any PAC, lobbyists, or special interest money. And folks, if you want to get that out of your campaign, you easily can. All you have to do when you take the contributions, in my case, my wife does it, it's built right in the program. It asks the question, is it a PAC, lobbyist, or a special interest? And their name pops up. And you just don't take the money. Work for their support. It's good to have the support on all sides. But you don't need the special interest money. You don't need this legislation. You don't need any legislation. Just say no and don't take it. It's the right thing to do.
The member from Hennepin, Representative Loeffler.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker and members. I think that actually this underlying bill, which we've gotten far afield from, is actually what we really do need, which is, updating and making sure that we have a really strong system of campaign finance reporting and accountability and transparency, which is what I think all of us should be accountable to and to the voters. And for those voters who might be watching on TV, you can go to the Minnesota Campaign Finance Board. You can look up all of our campaign finance reports back going a long way. You can see what we use our campaign money for and what we don't. You'll find that we do differ in terms of what kind of constituent outreach we do and how and where our sources of funding are. And it's a really important part, I think, of our election system, that in Minnesota we do have a transparent system by which the ordinary person, no matter what their political affiliation is, can just simply go to the library if they don't have access on their own to the internet and look up on a computer what is happening and who is being involved in the local campaigns to elect who will be voting in this beautiful chamber on issues that impact their lives and the lives of their neighbors every single day. And so I really think that we need to make sure that this bill moves forward because it is improving and strengthening and updating our underlying campaign finance laws, our accountability, and our records. And with that, I'd encourage people to vote yes.
Representative Slocum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I don't say a lot, and I don't say it often. When I have something to say, I say it. I'm a card-carrying member. Here's the card. Education Minnesota, AFT, Local 59. When I screen, and I'm endorsed by them, and I wish Representative Erickson was here, because she could verify for you, I don't always toe the mark. But when I screened with Education Minnesota, I screened with Richfield teachers, Bloomington teachers, my district. They recommended my endorsement. They know that I support charter schools, which are at this point just beginning to look at the union process. They know I support alternative programs. They know that I am a fighter for kids, and I get their endorsement. Do I take PAC money? You bet I do. I get $5 contributions with a nice handwritten letter from the members, the people in my district. I have to take some of that money or I can't run a campaign with any kind of fairness. So when I get their endorsement, I'm proud of it. I'm a member. It's very local and very transparent, as all union, in my union, business is.
Representative Laine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree with Representative Loeffler that this is the bill about the Campaign Finance Board, which is a wonderful entity that keeps the financial regulations and disclosure clear for everyone. This particular bill simply clarifies and standardizes wording and updates areas to changes that we made in 2013, and with that, members, please vote yes.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. Norton votes aye. There being 125 ayes and 0 nays, the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. The next bill on the calendar for the day is House File 1961. The clerk will report the bill.
House File 1961 on the calendar for today, the second engrossment, an act relating to ethics in government.
Representative Halverson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House File 1961 is a bill that addresses public official and financial interest disclosure. I would like to just preface this by saying I believe really strongly in the members of this body and public officials in general throughout the state of Minnesota. I think that public officials in Minnesota operate with great integrity. And the fact is our reputation as a state is a state that has very great integrity. When policy analysts at the state level and nationwide take a look at the way that our laws are written around public integrity, they come to a different conclusion. So Minnesota has fallen behind other states in terms of what it requires for public integrity and public disclosure for elected officials. That said, I don't believe we've fallen behind in practice, but I do believe it is time for our laws to catch up with the practice of good integrity as public officials. And so this bill comes to us and makes a few minor changes to the way we currently disclose. First and foremost, it requires audits by the Campaign Finance Board with regard to our disclosure. Previously, that language in statute has been permissive. We have changed that to be mandatory within the resources of the Campaign Finance Board, and we do so because that is really a nationwide standard. That's something that's happening across the country. Additionally, we disclose some additional potential conflicts of interest. As we know here in this body, and I'm sure it happens with local governments as well, there are times when you may be asked to take a vote where you as an elected official may have a significant and unique situation that could potentially advantage you financially. In those cases, as elected officials, we are required to disclose that potential conflict, and then in practice we recuse ourselves from voting on those issues. In this case, we add spouses to that potential conflict of interest as well. So if for some reason there is a financial interest that could benefit your spouse uniquely and significantly, That would be the threshold for which an elected official would have to disclose your spouse's your conflict of interest with regard to your spouse. I should note that that bar is very high, and I think that evidence of the fact that that bar is very high is the fact that we don't see it used that often, frankly, in this body. So something to consider. It's, again, standard practice in other states, and it's standard practice with the federal government that this kind of potential conflict of interest is disclosed for both the member and the spouse, and this catches Minnesota statutes up to that. Third, with regard to the statement of economic interest, over the years there have been requests for individuals who might hang out their own shingle as a private consultant, as an attorney, as a accountant, to have to name their clients. Frankly, when I hear those conversations, I think about the clients in those situations, and I really believe that clients deserve their privacy with regard to their business relationships. However, I do think that it is in the public's interest and it is in our best interest to be transparent with the public with how we make our money. So if we are not employed by another organization, if we hang out our own shingles, this part of the bill would require us to disclose what categories of monies we are receiving. So again, and if you look at the bill, it's broad categories like real estate or agriculture. It's not great detail, and these categories are drawn directly from IRS tax code. So there's something that are established in federal law currently. And then finally, with regard to any board audits that come forward, we will all the data that is required for an audit remains your private data. So there is no opening up of private data, particularly private financial data. So that is the bill, and I believe there's some amendments.
There is an amendment at the desk.
Mr. Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry, please.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, it has been the goal of the Elections Committee to do things on a bipartisan basis, and there has been some confusion on both sides of the aisle on this particular bill. And I'd ask if we could lay this over for a day so that the two caucuses could visit about this and remove the confusion and be able to come back and take this matter up for the people of the state of Minnesota for all the reasons that Representative Halverson had talked about to improve transparency.
I'm not sure there was there could be a motion to lay a bill on the table, I guess is yes.
Mr. Speaker, then I make the motion to lay the bill on the table. A roll call, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. Roll call being requested, seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. The clerk will take the roll on the motion to lay the bill on the table. The clerk will close the roll. There being 54 ayes and 69 nays, the motion doesn't prevail. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Halverson moving to amend House File 1961, the second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded 261.
Representative Halverson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This amendment comes to us out of a conversation that I had with Representative Holberg after the Civil Law Committee hearing, and it simply requires that any final audit report that is completed with regard to this section would include the name of the employee who is conducting the audit.
Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
O'Driscoll moving to amend House File 1961. The second engrossment is followed. The amendment is coded A5.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Mr. Speaker, there's an amendment to that amendment.
There is an amendment to the amendment. The clerk will report that amendment.
O'Driscoll moving to amend this amendment to House File 1961. The second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A9.
Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What the A9 amendment does is what Representative Halverson was indicating, that in the bill 1961 we have a base amendment that talks about the different categories of employment, and there's some confusion as to what that might be, and to be able to make that on an ongoing basis, what we'd like to do is codify that to the IRS code. And so what the A9 amendment does is it references federal regulation that talks about those broad categories. And if you take a look at that portion of the IRS code, it also gives you subcategories under there. So we feel it would help those who have to make the reporting get a better idea of which category of the dozens of different categories that are available. And so I'd ask members to support the A9 amendment because it provides clarification to the A5 amendment, and they really are a hand-in-glove type of an amendment. So I encourage members to vote yes.
Any discussion? Representative Halverson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I support this amendment. In conversations with Representative O'Driscoll and other members, this really clarifies the intent of the law as written, and it's a very good amendment. Please vote yes.
On the amendment to the amendment, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. On the O'Driscoll amendment, Representative O'Driscoll.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As amended, this does clear up and codify for us the different categories, and I'd ask members to go ahead and support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Halverson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and echoing what Representative O'Driscoll says, this is a very good amendment. It clarifies the language of the bill. Please vote yes.
All those in favor of the amendment say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. There's another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Pepin moving to amend House File 1961. The second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A6.
Representative Pepin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the same amendment that I had earlier, and I want to withdraw it.
Representative Pepin withdraws her amendment. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Drazkowski moving to amend House File 1961. The second engrossment as follows. The amendment is coded A4.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment qualifies, if you will, the language about requiring disclosure from spouses and former spouses, and says that any former spouse is required to disclose that the former spouse has contributed more than $500,000 in aggregate to campaigns and political funds and principal campaign committees, party units, etc., throughout the state. Also clarifies disclosure to include other sources of income, including trust funds and other interest-bearing accounts, whether they're located within the United States or outside. Also clarifies that the statement of economic interest must distinguish between contributions reported on behalf of the individual and those reported on behalf of the spouse, and includes the official. It has language defining the spouse to include the official's current spouse and any former spouse. I would encourage your support for this amendment. Mr. Speaker, I'd ask for a roll call.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment, and we have heard discussion from not only, I don't know if we have heard it so much with this bill, but previous bills about, from the majority, about concerns about contributions from large donors. And members, that's exactly what this does. As a matter of fact, It was pointed out that there's a high-ranking government official in the state of Minnesota that has an ex-spouse that has regularly contributed over $500,000 and would actually be someone who would be subject to the provisions of this amendment. Members, if indeed the discussion that we have heard is in earnest and wants to make certain that we have those types of transparencies and disclosures for large dollar donors within contributions, this amendment is for you, and I would encourage your support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Seeing no further discussion, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Well. The clerk will close the roll. There being 54 ayes and 70 nays, the motion does not prevail. The amendment is not adopted. The clerk will give the bill its third reading.
Third reading, House File 1961 as amended.
Third reading. Discussion of the bill. Seeing no discussion of the bill, the clerk will take the roll on the bill. The clerk will close the roll. There being 76 ayes and 48 nays, the bill the bill is passed as amended and its title agreed to. Reports from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration.
Report from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration. Murphy E. for the Committee on Rules. Pursuant to Rule 121, 333 designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for today for Tuesday, April 29, 2014. House File 1984, 2622, Senate File 1689, House File numbers 2798 and 2214, Senate File numbers 1246, 2466, and House File numbers 2405, 2912, and 2167.
Motions and resolutions. There are copies of the non-controversial motions and resolutions online and at the front desk. There's no objection. We'll take action on those motions first. Seeing no objection, those motions prevail. Any announcements? Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as I mentioned yesterday, today is Arbor Day. Arbor Day was first established in Nebraska by J. Sterling Morton and moved throughout the country in the 1870s and 1880s for planting trees. Earlier today I sent you an email, kind of the history and the background on Arbor Day, and there's some fascinating old photos in there about the importance that early settlers placed on planting trees. So today we have two sets of trees for you. The last Friday in April is now considered in most states Arbor Day, and I would like to recognize or to have the Speaker recognize Representative Loon to talk about one of the trees.
Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and Representative Hansen. One of the trees that we'll be distributing today is the Black Hill spruce. This is a variation on the white spruce. It's one of the white spruce species that is native to the northern climates. In fact, I think it's one of the most northernest trees native to Northern America and growing in very cold climates, and also can be found in Montana, Wisconsin, Michigan, as well as Alaska and several other states. It's an ornamental evergreen conifer. It would be ideal if you're looking to plant as a windbreak or a privacy screen or some kind of an accent planting in your yard. Dark green color. And is a very attractive tree, has a nice conical form to it. It is not difficult when it comes time to mow your lawn and that. The needles are short, they're fairly soft to the touch, so it is a lovely tree to have in your yard and should give you many, many years of enjoyment. It can grow to heights of 40 to 60 feet, so when you're planting you might want to think about years and generations ahead. It can be a very large tree as well, but I think it will make a great addition to wherever you choose to plant it, and I hope you all enjoy the gift of these trees today. With that, I would yield to Representative Melin.
Representative Melin.
Thank you, Representative Loon and members. And the other tree that you have today is the northern pin oak. It's an oak tree. It's native to the northern Midwest United States and also southern Ontario. It's popular because it gets pretty bright red in the fall, so it's one of those trees that's pretty through the summer and the fall. And then eventually, a couple decades from now, if you want to repurpose your tree, this wood is commonly used for fence posts, fuel, and general construction projects. That would be a ways down the road. We hope that you enjoy it before that you're able to do that. For some of us, it's probably going to be a couple months before the ground is thawed enough in order to plant these trees, but hopefully you can get out soon and be able to enjoy it. And I want to thank Representative Anzels for his district, Itasca Greenhouse, which provided these trees today, and I'd like to yield the floor to Representative McNamara.
Representative McNamara.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's a real honor to be able to do this tradition. I think we've done it for about the entire 12 years I've been here, so it's pretty cool. Members, for most of you, with the exception of probably Representative Fabian, Representative Keel, Representative Anzelk, and Representative Dill, most of you, Representative Erickson, you probably won't be able to, Representative R. Erickson probably won't be able to plant it this weekend. Otherwise, for most of you, your ground's not still frozen and not snow covered. You'll be able to plant it. Tomorrow seems like it's going to be a great day. I would encourage you to put it out where it's very open and where it can get very big. Both of these species get quite large. If you're up from far northern Minnesota and your ground is still frozen, just throw it in the refrigerator. I think when you go home next weekend, you should be able to plant it. If you can't utilize it, give it to one of your neighbors or friends or family. I know it's been an honor for many folks. The trees are now taller than we are from the first few years. So enjoy the trees, members.
All right. Other announcements. Representative Lesh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The joint hearing of the Civil Law, Health and Human Services, and Health and Human Services Finance will be 1/2 hour after we adjourn in SOB room 200.
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Representative Loon was describing that tree, and she said it was short and soft to the touch. I thought she was talking about both of us. That was good. That's a compliment to her and I. I don't know what the heck. So, members, I'm going to talk about just love too. And up front, you'll see the shirt that is at high demand right now. And if you haven't signed up yet, we really need to know the numbers. So the shirts are going quick. Representative Loon has done a great job putting these together. And so please make sure you get signed up for our first event of the season with the Love To. And I'll yield to Representative Loon for the finishing touches here.
Representative Loon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, yes, members, I think Representative Ward covered it well, but we would like to get RSVPs by Monday, and we will be sending out driving instructions from the Capitol and also parking information where you can park when we get over to higher ground on Tuesday morning. I'll check on the number of spaces, but probably is a good idea to carpool if possible, because I'm not sure they would have enough to accommodate 30 or 40 cars. So look forward to having everyone who can make it there. I know I've heard from a couple of members who can't, and for that I'd say don't worry. We will have another opportunity coming up on May 6th. That's also a Tuesday in the evening for Hope Chest in St. Paul. So, and more information will be coming out on that early next week. So if you can't make this one, we understand. Hopefully you can make it on the 6th, but we look forward to a great turnout next Tuesday.
Representative Earhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 9 a.m. on Monday to be a joint hearing of the House and Senate Transportation Policy Committees in Room 10, and we'll be taking up the informational hearing about the auditor's report on pavement and local bill 3350, Representative Fritz's bill. Thank you.
Representative Hortman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the Energy Policy Committee, we're also having a hearing on Monday at 9 a.m., informational hearing on House File 2883. It will be in the basement hearing room.
Representative Liebling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members, bringing us back to our Arbor Day gift here, I'm just standing to sort of represent the rest of us here who are not part of the coalition of our colleagues who provide us with these wonderful trees every year. And I think that those who are providing us with this gift are those who spoke. But could you please raise your hand if you're one of the people who are providing these trees to your colleagues? I know Representative McNamara, he just disappeared. But Representative Hansen, I think was Representative Melin as well, and I hope I'm not missing anybody. McNamara, of course. But members, I just think we need to thank our colleagues for doing this, and it is a wonderful tradition. I know I've planted mine. I've tried to plant them every year. Some have grown, some have not, but they do this out of their own pockets, just as a gift for all of us, and I think we need to stand and recognize them. Thank you.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If Representative Ward would yield for one question, please, Mr. Speaker. Jay Ward.
Sure. Representative Fabian.
Thank you. Representative Ward, I was just putting together a little summary of the week's activities, and one of the things that we had this week was the privilege of being introduced to Miss Minnesota. And you mentioned in your presentation of her that she started playing in the orchestra. I don't remember what grade it was. Can you refresh my memory, please?
Representative Ward.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I could tell how thrilled you were about this question. For the 16th time, second grade she started in.
Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that when the House adjourns today, it adjourns until 12 noon Monday, April 28th, 2014.
Representative Murphy moves that when the House adjourn today, it adjourn until 12 noon Monday, April 28th, 2014. All those in favor say aye. All opposed, no. The motion prevails. Representative Murphy.
I move that the House do now adjourn.
Representative Murphy moves that the House do now adjourn. All in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. The motion prevails. The House stands adjourned until 12 noon, Monday, April 28th, 2014.